Welcome back to part 2 of View Your To-Dos. In this episode, we're going to take what we built last episode where we had the HTML and CSS, but we're going to go ahead and hook up the functionality while using Vite, Vue 3, and the composition API. Let's jump right in. Alright, so jumping back into our project, let's go ahead and open it up in VS Code. And then, let's see, we are in the right project. I'm going to go ahead and get lens. I'll deal with that later. Okay. Alright, so inside of our VS Code, we're going to go ahead and start up with yarn dev. That starts up our Vite app, great at 3000. So go ahead and open this up in our Chrome window, drag this over. Alright, great. I'm going to go ahead and push this over to the third. Great. I think we have our setup. And let me just open up a new terminal here. Alright, and I think we're good for now. So let's hide this. Actually, let's hide the terminal. And yeah, so let's go ahead and get started. So we have basically what we've wired up from earlier in episode 1. And so today we're going to wire up the functionality of it. And so the core of any good Vue, or not Vue, the core of any good to-do app is certainly the ability to input the item and then actually add it. So let's start with that. That's the core thing we need to focus on here. So here we have a couple things going on. We have the main the main input, which we're calling new task input right here. And so what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to watch this, right? And we want to keep track of what the user is typing. So I think we're going to go ahead and, so we're going to, using composition API, we're going to create our setup method. Okay. So we're going to create our setup method here. And let's start by creating our reactive object, right? And so what we're going to want to track this time is we're going to use the reactive instead of ref from Vue. And so I think this is the first time I'm using it in like an official build with Ben video. And so as we'll see, one of the things I like about reactive, right? So I'm just going to create a general state variable that's going to be reactive. And so reactive is good for tracking objects. And so if we think of reactive, it's actually quite similar to our data property that we use, we would use typically inside of the object API. So you can see here, if you actually look, the syntax is actually quite similar as far as like what you want to keep track of that's reactive. And so in this regard, I think I actually prefer the reactive compared to ref, just because it's closer to the mental model we're already used to. And more importantly, it has a benefit, which we'll see shortly. Okay, so in this case, we're going to call it new task input. And we'll assign that for now to, let's say, a test task. And the reason I want to do that is because when I attach it to the new task input, I would like this to be a vmodel new task input. So that's attached to that. And so when we do this, new task input should be returning here, but nothing is happening right now. So even when we refresh, nothing's happening. And so there's a couple things. You'll see that it's not refined during instance, so we're getting the warning here. But this, if you've kind of done any of the live coding with me, this is actually where Vite, I think, kind of shows a little bit of like being on the earlier side, because if this were Vue CLI, like my window would actually be automatically lit up right now. And so this is already a slight difference from what I'm used to with Vue CLI. Because actually, what we need to do actually is we need to return the state, we need to expose it. And so the fact that Vue CLI helps us surface that immediately is a nice DX piece, because I don't have to open the terminal to see what's happening. And so now that I've returned state, though, you'll see that right now nothing's happening, and you're going to be thinking like, oh, why is that? And that's because state is actually an object, and really what we should be doing here is state.newTask.input. And actually, let me go ahead and hide the sidebar while we're at it. And now you can see actually test task is actually being rendered. And so to verify that this is actually working, we could go ahead and then render this out in a p tag and just call it like state.newTaskInput like this. And you see that it's here, and then as in here, as I come in here and I type, it updates accordingly. So that's great. But what you're probably thinking is that like, gosh, does it mean I have to type state for everything? Like what happened to the Vue way where the moment I put in basically an property inside of my reactive object. I just want to refer to that because otherwise I have to do state dot everywhere. And the way we do that is with a helper function called 2refs. And the reason why we need this is because right now you might be tempted to go, well, it's an object. Ooh, sorry. And because it's an object, we can spread it. But when we spread it, what happens is we end up breaking everything because basically, imagine that the reactive is tracking the object. And when we spread it, we break it apart. Like we basically disconnect that reactivity. And so this is where the refs is important because we're basically saying, hey, make every property that we're breaking up in here into reactive properties that we're keeping track of. And so it's 2refs. Yep, that should be right. And it's crashing. Why is it crashing? New task input of undefined. Ah, yes, that's right. Because state is no longer being pulled out. We now do it like this. And we refresh. There we go. Everything's good. It's test task now. And we can validate that this is working. So first, let me go ahead and drop that right now. And then, so vModel is here, new task input. And so we validate that's working. But what we need to do now is actually submit the task, right? And so typically, when people are typing, we want to be able to allow them to hit enter, and enter is what's going to submit it. So we are going to need to go ahead and track this somehow. And so we are going to need our task lists, right? So this is like an array. And right now we have some boilerplate stuff in there, but that's totally fine. We're not going to worry too much about that because what we're going to do is just we want to make sure this is actually updating. So we're going to create a method on our input, right? And so on key up, using the view modifier, key up enter, right? And when we do key up enter, we're going to want to say basically add task is all we're going to do. And so we can in here create our method const add task, and then it's going to go ahead and say state.taskList.push, because we have new item, equals state.new task input. All right. So one of the things you'll first notice with this is that I'm not calling dot value, and that's what we were doing a lot with, particularly in the PikaView episode, if you watch that one. It's because when we used refs for everything, they had to be unpackaged because there was basically a proxy wrapping the value. And with reactive, we don't have to worry about that, which is really nice. And so we can basically just do what we need to do here. And so to verify this work, let's go ahead and expose that. So that's add task. And so here I can go, oh, actually I need to render the task list. Otherwise, we're not going to see this. So let me go ahead and just do a p tag here. Task list. Okay, we see our right here. And you might have noticed too, actually, this is another inadvertent benefit of using reactive, is that because we're automatically spreading out the reactive object on the return, we don't have to like keep going down to update the refs that we need to expose. Because in the past, whenever I set up a new ref, that meant I had to go down to and return it individually, and that was kind of annoying. So anyhow, so now we can test this out. So we'll say milk, enter, and you see that things are starting to change, right? Bread. One thing we notice here that's a little weird is that we need the task list to reset. So that would be as simple as saying new task input equals like this. Basically reset it every time. So again, let's try that again. So we go milk, bread, candy. Great, everything's resetting as you would expect. And so if you're thinking like, oh, like that's a lot of states, I really don't want to do that. Well, we can use ES6 to basically destructure it in a way that we can basically like make it easier for typing. So we know we want input and we want task list, and that's going to come out of state. And so when you do this sort of destructured like variable declaration, I think this should still work. Let's try this real quick. Whoops. Woo. New task, and let's see what happens. So if we go ahead and do bread. So here's the thing, interesting. It's pushing, but new task input is no longer being pulled in. Now, why is that? This has a little bit to do with what we were talking about before with the 2refs. And so if you're going to actually pull out these variables, you're actually going to need to convert them into reactive pieces. And so while it's a little bit more verbose, I personally don't mind too much having the state behind it. But anyways, this is something to consider if you think that, oh, I can just pull it out. Remember that we have this thing wrapped in a reactive object. So if we want to break it down, then we need to make sure we wrap the things accordingly and convert them to refs, that is. So yeah. All right. So we have this, we have the add task. And now let's go ahead and just make sure our task list is rendering correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this. All right. So we know a couple things. Well, one, inside of our task list now, it's a little bit more complicated. So we're starting to notice like there's this thing we're looping through. So I'm going to go ahead and actually just, let's see. We have a couple of things I might want to keep track of. So we know that there's a delete icon, edit icon. So I know that there's this checkbox circle. This is going to change based on whether it's complete or not. So that's going to be something we're going to have to, I'm just going to cut that real quick. And drop this here. And then if I save, it's fine. We'll see it side by side. That's fine. At least I'll remember. And so, yeah, so we have this list that we need to iterate over, right? So we can simply do a v4 task item in task list. And we can do a key. For now, I'm just going to do, yeah, I can just do the task item for now. But we probably want to do something a little bit more unique. And then we can do the actual task in here. Task item, and we save. So we can, so bread, milk, candy. Okay, so our list is rendering, and this is looking pretty good. So let's go ahead and at least commit this much. So we can go ahead and in our view, so we say commit feature user can add tasks to a list. Great. Okay. So we're far from done though, because suddenly while we have this list, what we need to do is actually map out the properties a little bit more, because it's not just tracking the label, we need to track the status of it. And so in that regard, we're doing it a little too simply right now because we're simply tracking strings. And what we need to track is actually an object. So in this case, what we want to do instead is go ahead and probably do like the label for the task is what we want to push. And then by default, we're going to say, let's say the status of it is going to be false. So it's just going to be either true or false as far as like whether or not it's complete or not. And so in that regard, instead of status, I realized I think the better thing for us to do is just make this complete, whether it's complete or not. And then I'll just do this for alphabetical order's sake. Save. Great. And so now that we have this, we can go ahead and say we have a couple things we can do. One, we'll need to go ahead and where's my component? Yeah, so as you might have guessed, we probably want to componentize at some point just to make it a little bit cleaner. So one, we're basically saying v show if task list dot complete. So take that back. It should be v show here, and then this should be v hide task list dot complete. And so now if we do bread, nothing shows up. Why is that? I think the reason for this is task item dot label, task item dot complete dot label. Okay. So test, nothing's showing up. Why is nothing showing up? So it looks like created of undefined. Oh, v hide. Oh, I think I must have. I thought that there used to be a v hide, to be honest. Let's just check this real quick. V hide. I'm not gonna do the trivia on this. I'm pretty sure there was one at some point, but that's totally fine. So v show is the opposite of this. So this should be fine now. So we save milk, bread, candy. Great. Okay, so now that our icon is showing up correctly, the real question here is the v model on this, because we want to actually update the checkbox accordingly. So this v model is going to be attached to task list dot complete. And so this way, basically, not just v model task list complete. I just realized. Oh no, this is right. So let me just go ahead and unhide this real quick so we can actually see what I'm talking about. So here everything's false, and then if we default this to true instead when we push, we should see that the check, not only is the checkbox true, oh, that's a little surprising. Vix.complete task list.complete. Yep. Icon. If it's true, it should be showing check circle. Why is this the case? Alright, let's just verify something real quick. I'm probably missing something. Task item dot complete. Yeah, these are true. So if these are true, it should really be showing the icon check circle, not... Yeah, why is it only showing this side? Task list dot complete. This is... Again, let me just... Icon check circle. Bread. Okay, check circle is here. But actually, task list dot complete, is it just not negating it correctly? Alright, hold on, let me just make sure. V if show task item dot complete is true. Alright, if it's... Okay, so let's flip this real quick. So we have this. Right, so we have this. Otherwise, do this. So again, here. Okay, here it's complete true. But why is the V model on this not correct? Let's switch this to false real quick. Test. That's right. Alright, so I'm just going to go ahead and actually just pre-populate some data. So complete is true. Label is milk. And then we have complete. False. Label is bread. Okay, so that's good. It's a little surprising because normally I would expect basically the V model to take care of the checkbox, because what it really should be is binding to the checked value, and whether or not it's checked is then equal to task list dot complete, really, and this is here. So whether it's checked or not is equal to true, but it's interesting because we're not seeing that. So here we should be seeing checkbox. Yep. So we should see the value checked equals true, which should work. Yeah, see what's going on. Input checkbox, check, true. Check, valid, checked, yes. Okay, I mean, even if that's the case, check. This input really doesn't like it. Okay, let's take out the V model. And yeah, so interesting. We're seeing here that the checked input type checkbox is not working as expected. It should ambient input type checkbox. What is going on here? Okay, there's no equal. I don't think that's totally true. Okay, checked is fine, but it doesn't like this. Okay, hold on. Checked equals false. Okay, and true. It's suddenly working. Task item dot complete. Did I just... Maybe the V model was interfering? Which kind of makes sense. No, it's suddenly working now. That was Weird. Okay, so if I uncheck, yep. Okay, so you see that? I could have sworn that's what I did. All right, I'll look at the replay. Okay. So we can see now that this way when we check, it checks off the 2, which is nice. But we're gonna go ahead and again, we're gonna hide this to SR only, because right now this is not what we want to see. However, if we go ahead and attach this though, then we can say at click. For now, we'll say update. See. We want to update the V model to switch it on and off. So this is, I wonder how we can do this in an easy way, because we already have it bound to this and the input automatically has a listener on this. So it kind of would be nice if our input actually, like the icon was basically superimposed on it. So I wonder if we could do something a little bit more. So let me do task list checkbox. And let's see if we can do some magic here with some CSS. Because, okay, here's the thing. We can click the icon manually and have it go ahead and switch over. But the problem I don't like about that is it's a lot more moving pieces, and the input is already very, like the input type checkbox already works out of the box. It kind of doesn't make sense for us to rebuild that functionality. So again, I'll do this task list checkbox wrapper. Okay. So again, let's go ahead and task list checkbox wrapper. And then I'm gonna go ahead this time, let's see. So display relative, because I'm pretty sure I'm gonna need to position everything inside of it, absolute. So the checkbox itself is gonna be position absolute. And then it'll be left 0. Okay, interesting. Let's see where this border is. 2px solid red. Yep, that's right. So we have our checkbox in here, and then yeah, the wrapper should be what it's relative to. That's a little surprising. So let's just haha. Position relative, not display relative. There we go, much better. And then the only other thing is that I want to see how far I can take this as far as, so what if I did opacity 0? Okay, can I toggle? Ooh, yeah, I kind of, okay, this basically, you see that? The opacity is 0, but it is definitely still there, and it's just a visual thing. So I think I just need to switch it over a little. I'm gonna nudge it a little bit so it covers it up, and then let's do 1 pixel. Let me just do 10 and see where it goes. Up. Okay, that is what I wanted. 5. Nope. 3. I'll do 2. Okay, 2 seems to sit right in the center of it, so that's good enough, I think, for especially this sort of prototype. So we can hide it entirely, and then we can hide the border. And now what we can do is just simply switch out, switch in. Great. Okay, this is great. Although, hold on one sec. I just realized, is it not really aligned correctly? Align, sorry, display flex, align item center, justify content center. Okay, okay, now this should be tighter. Yep. Okay, great. That looks much tighter. All right, so we solved our problem now. So now we can actually click this and it'll toggle. And so the reason this is kind of a neat, basically a clever trick with CSS is because we're still using the input checkbox. Like that's what's responsible for it. But we've gone ahead and done is we've overlaid it with our icon check circle, and that's gone ahead and what's basically being flipped on and off. And so the only other thing I don't not particularly crazy about is the fact that we're using the VIF, because this is something people theoretically will toggle on and off. So I don't know why the V show on this time is so finicky, because this should be okay. There's nothing inherently wrong with this, but again, maybe we're just running into a glitch with the compiler at the time. Yup. There you go. True, false. false, true. Okay. So this did work. I guess we were just running into weird compilation issues earlier. But that's okay. All right. So, whoops. We have the check toggling. So this is great. This took a little bit. But so feature add a dynamic list with checkbox toggling. Okay. Now that we are able to toggle our lists and we can add stuff, let's go ahead and focus on this navigation piece. Because right now it's basically unfunctional. And so let's go ahead and, you know what, let's clean up this complete, because we don't need this anymore. It's being tracked by the icon. And then let me just go ahead and clean it up. So that's a refactor, clean up test text. Okay. And so what we're going to want to do is when we click on each individual ones, we want to actually return a filtered view depending on basically what option we're choosing, right? And so there's a couple of ways we can do this, but I think the easiest way for us to do this is probably just through a computed property. And so what we're going to want to do then is track which view that we care about. And so inside of our state, we can say current view is what we're going to want to say. And so the current view basically will have the option of either being all current or completed, either one. And so this will determine. So right now we'll say by default it's going to be all. And then actually I'm going to go ahead and match the casing just because it'll make our lives a smidge easier, but we'll see in a second. So I will decide that in a second. Okay, so now that we have that, we need to have a computer property because right now we're just returning all of the task list, and we want to be able to switch it based on what is actually like the state of current view. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to import computed helper method from view, and we're going to say, so basically we're going to say const filter, or let's see, tasks in view, right? This is basically what's currently being shown up, is a computed property that takes a function, right? That's going to return the property that we care about. And so in this case, it depends, right? So what we're saying is if state.currentView is equal to all, then we're gonna say return state.taskList. Actually, just state.taskList, because we're gonna return everything. We don't really care. However, and in this case, it's making me think maybe I should flip this, but it's fine. That current view, yeah, I'm already thinking. So this is the default state. This is actually the easiest thing. So we'll flip that in a second. If state.currentView equals to instead current, we're gonna instead return state.taskList, but we're gonna go ahead and filter out for every item, and we only want to filter out the ones where item.complete is false. That's only the ones we want. And then if the state.currentView is equal to completed, then we're gonna want to return state.taskList.filter item, where item.complete is equal to true. Triple equal true, right? And then this is where our default state is. Like if nothing else works, like if we don't have anything else, we return the state.taskList. So this is where I say I'm just gonna flip it because I think this makes more sense. Because we only care about these two. And so now that we have this task in view that's computed, which is great, we can go ahead and expose that here. So task in view. And so what we're going to do here now is rather than simply render out this list that's based on task lists, we'll say tasks in view, save that. And this is good because right now we have currently everything is all. That's our default state. What we can do is go ahead and click. So let's say that's up here. So when we click, we need to actually set something, right? So we'll say set view. And then we're going to go ahead and pass it, in this case, all. And then we will go ahead and at click set view current. And then at click set view as completed. These are like our three main states. And so we can go ahead, and we don't have that method yet, so we're going to add that const set view. And we're going to take the basically the view label is what we're taking in. and we're basically saying state dot current view is equal to view label. See how it's so nice that we don't have to unwrap with dot value? It's so nice. Or at least it makes my life a lot easier, because again, I'm used to the way we've been doing things in Vue 2, and more importantly, it's just one less thing that I have to remember that's special. This is how you would typically write it in JavaScript, how you would expect to. And so now when we click, we should see, now you see that it's filtering, and so this is good. Means that we're having the filtering working, but we need this other thing though, where we need to actually track the views count. And so this is where it's starting to, well, it's getting a little bit tricky now, because now what we can do is go ahead and go like const all tasks length equals computed, and then we have to do this thing now where we have all these computed properties, right? Because it's going to be const current task length. That's a lot of computed properties to track, and then you have to expose them to the basically to the actual template manually. And so rather than do that, we're gonna optimize this by, we know that this has to do with the task views. Like all of this stuff is dealing with views. So rather than do that, what I'm gonna do is we're gonna say const task views, and we're gonna make this a reactive object. And what we're gonna get to do here is you're gonna see now when I do all task basically count or length. I'll just say length to be specific. Let's see. Total. No. Total tasks. Right. You'll see in a second. This is a computed property, right? And what we want to return is state.taskList.length. That's it. And then on the other hand, we have so instead of total tasks, I realize because we don't call it total tasks, so I'm gonna go back to all task lengths. This is more explicit. Then we have current task length. And this is a computed property that's going to be based on state. I forgot I need to return these. So we can say return. And so in this case, we can say return state dot task list, but we're going to filter it out. And so it already feels like there should be some optimization here, but that's fine. So where all the items are equal, where item.complete is equal to false. And yeah, in this, okay, I'm not gonna get ahead of myself. And then here dot length, and then we're gonna have the completed task length, and this is a computer property, and return state dot task list dot filter item dot complete is equal to true dot length. Okay. So now we have all these three things tracked in here. All we have to do is expose tasks views instead. And so similarly to state, we can go ahead and spread out our basically our task views here as the two refs, and then we can replace everything in here that we have. So in this case, we can go, this is going to be all length, great. This is going to be current task length, and then it's already doing the autocomplete for me, which is awesome. Completed task length. So if we save this now, everything should be updated. So if I add candy here, this updates to 2, and then we can say what are some other fun things to buy? Sandwiches. I can do this as sandwiches. Tacos. Great. And so here we can check, as we check this off, you see that it's going to update 2, 3, and then we can switch our views accordingly, which is awesome. So before we talk about any other refactoring, let's actually go ahead and just commit this, right? So we've added functionality for task list views. Yep. So that's basically what we've done here. Okay. Now that we have that, though, we were talking a little bit about refactoring, right? Because here we see that there's clearly some repetition going on here. And this makes actually a lot more sense for us to actually track different aspects about the task list itself. So there's arguably, right, with composition API, because we can now start organizing things a bit differently. We can actually probably do something instead and pull this out and probably go const task list, task list actually, and this is a reactive object. Right? And then what we want to do here is we want to say, okay, so we have the main task list is being tracked in the state, but then we want to be able to calculate basically different properties that we're gonna call later on. So we can say that task list dot all. Actually, that's fine. We can go ahead and say that this is going to be the computer property that returns basically state.taskList. And we could then go current is, though actually, yes, I'm gonna do it this way, and I'll explain why in a second. Let's see. So computed here is we're gonna go ahead and abstract this piece out that we did earlier. So task list, it's gonna be faster for me to just type this. Item, right, item dot complete is gonna be equal to false. And so we have that, and then finally we're gonna have our completed, yep, and then, so I'll go ahead, this time I'll grab it here. So we're gonna return this. So computed is this, okay? And so now that we've abstracted this, we can then say, instead of all of this stuff, we can say task list dot all. And then actually we can even simplify this even more, because we are returning task list dot all dot length. And so here that should work. Hang on a sec. Why is it breaking on me? Whoop, 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 whoop. Okay. Let's look at the console real quick. Task list. Oh, sorry, I misspelled that. Task list. And then there are lists. There are multiple lists. Okay. Great. So we have that, and it's still working as expected. And so you can see we're going to get to clean this up a bit more, because task list is what's going to contain all the computer properties we care as far as the list. So this is going to be current.length, and this is going to be task list dot completed.length. And so this is a kind of neat way of starting to thinking of ways to reorganize your code. Oh wait, something is wrong. I mistyped again. Okay. So here again we can go candy. Let me hide that, and then we can switch, and it's still updating as anticipated. But now what we've done is we've refactored it so that we are tracking our task list accordingly as far as like whatever we're actually showing, and sort of organizing it this way rather than sort of like spreading it out. So this is kind of a neat way to, or not even neat. It's just another way to think about ways you could organize your code theoretically. And so, okay, so we have that refactored a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Actually, I'm going to do this one step. I should think. Yeah, I think this is at least a good enough factor to commit. Certainly, for sure. Abstract task list computation type. Okay. Okay. The next thing we're gonna need to do actually is we need to go ahead and actually, you know what I realized to do? We never wired up the add button. So if someone does like tacos here and clicks add, nothing's happening. So let's go ahead and fix that. So if we go inside the add add button, this should be as when it's clicked, then we do the add task, run it. And so now if we click add click, did not taco, click add. Okay, there you go. Now it's updating. Yeah, so again, it's a little weird because I'm like 90% sure I saved, and for some reason Vite did not reload. So again, like Vite is still in experimental phase, and it's still like as people play around with it, I'm sure we'll find ways to bolster it. But this is where some of the differences come when it comes to Vue CLI and some people's expectations of it. So that's why I wanted to play around with Vite. In this case, it's again a sandbox environment where we can sort of test things out. But again, when it comes to production, just be aware of some of these things that might come up, that it is a different experience. So again, this is an isolated task. So let's go ahead and update this. So feature add task to add, but that's a lot of add, but it's fine. I think that's it's fairly explicit. So we can toggle now, and we got a couple more functionality things to add before we wrap up, for this episode, and that is the fact that we need to be able to edit and we need to be able to delete. So let's start with the delete functionality because that's easier to do. Right now, currently, everything is being tracked via, basically, it's in an array, so it's in a specific position. And for now, we're just going to take advantage of that and utilize that as a way to delete. And so what do I mean by that? Well, we are looping through currently our entire task item in task.view. But I realized, though, one of the problems with this, when I was just saying this, is that while it's kept in a specific like index of the array of like the original list, we won't be able to actually rely on the index as a way to delete the task item because we're computing a different array depending on where we're deleting it. This means that now we actually need to be a little bit more intentional about this. And so I think the easiest way for us to do this then is to go ahead and identify the basically individual tasks with their own IDs. And so, certainly we could try to identify by the text, but this means that if because someone can perfectly come in here and add two things to Taco, and we would need to know the correct one to delete. Even though theoretically they may not be able to tell the difference, we would want to actually delete the actual item they're clicking on rather than just randomly picking one. So in that regard, what we're probably going to have to start doing is tracking our tasks via some sort of ID in addition. So what we're going to do now is okay. So what we're going to do in order to accommodate for this is we can certainly install a third-party library that generates a unique user ID. So you know what? No, we are going to do that. That's what we're going to do. So I'm going to say GitHub npm unique UID generator. So here we go. We have our unique ID here. So again, it looks like we just do UUID, and then it'll go ahead and just render it for us. So if it's that simple, that'll be great. So let's go ahead and yarn add UUID. Great. And then, so now if we import this helper library from UUID, so import, let's see, v4 as UUID. Okay, that's fine with me. We'll follow the syntax exactly. v4 as, I'm just going to call it UID. I don't need to call it v4 from UUID. Great. Then what we're going to do is go into every time we create a task, what I want to be able to do is actually, so on the add task, we're actually going to create an ID, and then I'm just going to call UUID like execute like this. And so to make sure this works, we're going to go ahead and render this out inside of our individual task. So I'm going to go ahead and inside the label, we'll do task list.id, task item.id. And this should show up here. So there's nothing here, which makes sense. But we do Taco now. Okay, so now we have this ID property here. And so basically, I don't know if there's a hard check on this, but we can know that statistically speaking, it'd be very, very unlikely that they're being run against each other. So if we're this were a production database, we want to make sure there's some sort of check on this to verify. But I think for the sake of this prototype, this UID should be more than adequate for us. So now that we have this UUID, what we can do is when the user clicks on delete, what we actually want to be able to do is then say, oh gosh, I'm realizing this really should be a button. But okay, one thing at a time. So we're going to go ahead and click delete item, but we're going to pass in the item ID. This is how we're going to know what to do with it. And so right now we don't have this delete item. Delete. I'm going to say delete task item. We had add task. You know what? Take that back. Delete task. That's consistent with our naming. So let's go ahead and pop back up. So here we have add task. So now we have const delete task. And so delete task then says, oh, sorry, we have the task ID, so we do receive that. So what we're going to do is we're going to delete the item from it. So we can say, let's see, what's the cleanest way to remove, let's see. So we say JavaScript array delete item. And so when it comes to these, it looks like pop shift filter remove specific item from array.js. There we go. So there is no remove, so we can splice. Yeah, I figured that was the case, but I wanted to see if there was a new way of doing things. Just because there is usually something new, of course. The index of splice. That's fine. Okay. So looks like it's a little bit better than I thought. Okay. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to say, okay, so we know that const task index is going to be equal to, so what we're going to do is go through state.taskList index of, so this is the method I'm looking for, and so we're going to search for that element, so where the task and where the task.id is going to be equal to task ID. And so to make sure this works, we're going to go ahead and log task index. And so the way we can tell this is going to work, so let me just do taco, is that when we click on delete, we should see that the item is 012, should be number 2 in the list. So it doesn't, oh, right. Delete task. Okay, let's try this again. So clear the console, hit tacos. We see tacos, we click on it, and it's -1. Did I not understand task dot index of correctly? Task ID, let's try that again. Tacos and delete. Okay, so we see it, but it's not able to find the index of. So let's do array index of. Yep. So index of. Oh gosh. So it only finds. Yep. No. So I'm looking. So no. I want array find, but find. So find returns the actual element, but I want the index of it. You need to use index, but it finds the element equality for the testing function. That's what I thought. Hold up, find index. But oh, okay. Instead of index of, I think I wanted find index. See, this is why we look up stuff, just to get. All right, so we reloaded. Great. So tacos, and then great. This is the second item. That's what we wanted. So index of was the incorrect utility function I used. Whoops. Okay. So now that we know that, then we can basically say state.taskList.splice task index, and we only want the first item. But actually, I don't even think I need that. I think that by default, it'll automatically take out the first item. So we can say taco, and then again, just to make sure this works, we'll do sandwich, and then delete. And oh my gosh, it deleted everything. I take that back. We do need the first item. Whoops. Tacos, sandwich, and then we click. Yeah, one item. Okay. Ooh, that was close call. Okay, great. So now we have the delete task. I'm gonna go ahead and actually also wipe out though this hard-coded data, so everything's clear. Wonderful. So let's go ahead and commit that. So feature add delete task ability. Okay. We got one more thing to do because we got tacos, we got sandwich. But what happens if like I misspell tacos and I want to edit this, right? Right now we only have to delete it and recreate it, which is not a huge deal, but it would be nice for us to actually like click on edit and have it swap out. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to do a little bit of magic where right now we're going to see that inside of our task, we have the actual task item here, right, the text. But what we can do is we can have an input here that is also going to be bound to the task item.label. And so what we're going to do here, though, so we can just show you. So we can save tacos is here, and when I actually like try to update it, you'll see that it's actually, well, it's actually being a little funny. That's a little surprising. Why is it doing that? It looks like it's having a hard time tracking the label in this case. This is good, but why is it like shortcutting my inputs? So I'm hitting multiple, oh, it's like throttling my typing, which is really weird. But it is kind of updating, which is kind of weirding me out. Yeah, this is really weird to me. Okay, so nonetheless, what we're seeing here is we have, and we need to be able to toggle basically between the two. And so task list text, basically, I'm going to go ahead and add this called task list edit, edit input, because what we're going to do is we're going to actually switch it based on the property of what we're toggling. So again, the vModel is acting a little funky, but we can deal with that later. So we can do again vif, again vshow. Actually, I don't know. I'm going to do vif, and then if it's task item dot edit is true, then we should display the input for the to modify it basically. And otherwise, we're gonna switch it out, basically. So v else here. And so, right, edit doesn't exist right now. So we're going to go ahead and then say every single item should come with an edit property that's by default false. And then we're basically going to say that const toggle edit, const toggle edit equals, so we take the task ID, because we need to actually go into task list. Gosh, this is crazy. Const task index equals task state task list dot find index, just like we did earlier. And so again, once again, making me think we can totally create a utility function out of this, but one thing at a time, because what we're trying to do now is go the state dot task list and then of this task index, and we're trying to say, hey, dot edit should be the opposite of whatever value is in edit already. So I'm just gonna swap this over. That's all we're doing. So you'll see here, if I go to toggle edit and scroll down to our edit button, great. And again, it's a little bothering me that it's not a button, but again, one thing at a time. When we click it, we will toggle edit, and then we will pass in the task item.id. That's basically what we're doing here. So taco sandwich. So here, if we click it, it should switch it, and you see that, great. We have our input, and it's just really weirding me out why it's rate limiting me. But I think rather than sit here and worry about that, we're not gonna worry too much about this right now. So because I think that's a bug for another time. So let me just, it is looking a little funny, and that's because I didn't do my class equals task list edit input. So kind of ugly actually. So let me just go ahead, edit input. Border 0. Okay, and then yep, and then people can type. It's not great, but it does do the trick. Let's see, font size. It should just be regular 16 pixels. Shouldn't change. Okay, yeah, I don't know why it's rate limiting me, but that is a bug for another time. But the editing is working, so that is the win we are going to celebrate here. So, okay. We now have the ability to toggle the edit field. Feature toggle edit field. Okay. And so with that, I think that wraps it up. So actually, let's go ahead and check out our branch. So this is where, yeah, so this basically wraps us up as far as the main functionality. We have some bugginess with the V model. If it's an interesting problem, I'll definitely make some content out of it. But otherwise, you can probably expect to see a commit inside the repo. But let's go ahead and check out our branch for, let's see, what do we have right now? I think it's 02. Yeah, so we're going to be on branch 03, basically so yeah, JavaScript. And then this is part of the V1 iteration. So there's that. And then, cool. All right, and then clear. Now for the final touches, what we're going to go ahead and do now is, so for the final step, what we're going to do is deploy our app so that people can actually play around with it and just, see it live. And let's go ahead and push that up. So what we're going to do is use the Netlify CLI to go ahead and, all right, here we go. All right, we're going to use the Netlify CLI to initialize a new project because I haven't created this one before. So we're going to go ahead and create and configure a new site. I'll be doing it inside Ben's team, and the site name will be View Your To-Dos. Great. So as you can see, what it's doing is it's already scaffolding the app. So the URLs, you can see that we have the View Your To-Dos Netlify app. And so for our build command, we're going to check out package.json just to double check. But you can see that here it's just build. So we're going to go ahead and yarn build. And the directory to deploy, you know what? I've never actually deployed a Vite build. So let's go ahead and open up the terminal real quick and check this out. So if we go to CD projects, View Your To-Dos, and run yarn build, let's see, everything is in dist. Okay, that would have been my guess, but good to know, and test that out. So we are in dist, and then it's going to go ahead and start. So just by running those few commands and configuring it, what we'll see is when I go ahead and run Netlify open, you'll see that now we have actually the site deploy in progress. So I'm going to go and full screen this. And it's going ahead and deploying the site. We can click on this to see the actual build log. So everything's looking good. And we're going to wait for it to build. Grabbing Vite, doing the production bundle. All right, and then the build's complete. That's it. And so now when we actually go to the preview, we'll see that our app is actually live. So now we can go tacos, sandwich, milk, and then then we can toggle that something is complete. We can go to current, go completed, everything works as expected. We can delete something. So here milk is done. We can switch to edit. And so you can see we're having some weird bugs, which we are going to fix in the next episode with the edit function. But for now, it like kind of like works. So this is the weird thing. But anyways, so everything's working. And so the reason why this is cool is because now we can go view your to-dos.netlify.app, and we have basically a custom like subdomain for us to build our thing on. But what's even cooler now is that if we push updates to our code, it'll actually go ahead and update that for us automatically. So for example, I realize now that if we go inside of Zeplin, I realize our completed state is technically inaccurate because what I forgot is that when we look at the design, there's actually a slight, there's a strike through effect on it. in addition to it being not only bold but a different color. So let's go ahead and fix that real quick. And so what we're going to go ahead and do is inside of app.view, when something is toggled as complete, right? Because that's how we know. We want to make sure that the text itself, which we have wrapped right here with task list text, right? And so we want to also say is complete. We basically want to drop that class in. So class, so if task item.complete is true, then we're going to go ahead and add it is complete. Otherwise, an empty class. So this should append our task onto that. So to show you that this has worked, let's go ahead and switch back over to our Vite app. And so here the sandwich is localhost, right? So here, and then what we're going to do is go inside of our task list text CSS. And this time we're going to say when task list text is appended with is complete, we want to do a couple things. One, we want to update the color. And so the color is going to be this, let's see, what was it? Let's see, Zeppelin. Unfortunately, the sidebar is a little bit finicky, but it is this 6B here. So we want to make sure that's applied. So I'm not going to save just yet because I actually want to see the change happen. On our side, so go ahead and save. Oh, this is the wrong one. This is the deployed one. We don't want that. So we can see already the colors here. And then let's see if CSS has a strike through decorator. Now, I don't use this one enough. Okay, yep. So text decoration line through. Makes sense. So then when it's complete, we'll have text decoration line through. And when we save, there you go. Now we have the effect we want, and we uncheck it. You can see it's no longer crossed off, and it looks correct. So let's actually commit this, and we're going to say, hey, well, one looks like we need to commit that git ignore. So let me do that real quick. Config ignore netlify config folder, and then we're going to go ahead and commit this change. So feature, for now this is a fix, so update add correct styles for completed task. And so now when I push origin main, one of the things happens. So because we've hooked up our app using Netlify, what it does is it actually tracks that something has changed. So what you're going to see here inside of our app is that suddenly it'll see inside, you see how it basically it detected that a new commit had been pushed onto main, and that now it's watching it, and it's going to go ahead and not only automatically build it, but then deploy it onto our production URL without any additional work from us. And so other ways this is super useful is because when you create basically pull requests for code bases, Netlify will also watch those and then basically build a staging environment so you can see the thing live. It's pretty fantastic. It's definitely been a game changer as far as working in open source and being able to check things. So we can see now that here you can see this is unique hash, but if I, again, to prove that it's on actual production, I'm going to go ahead and delete this, and you can see here. So again, tacos, and then when we check it off, you can see our styles have now updated. And all we had to do is basically push it up once we hooked it up with Netlify, which is pretty awesome. And that's a wrap. In this episode, we've gone ahead and wired up the functionality with Vue 3's composition API, but as usual, since this was a sort of one session build out MVP status, the status of the code is less than maintainable and can be better organized. Not to mention, we still have to take a look at that vModel bug where the edit state is just not working as expected. So, look forward to seeing you then, and until next time, Ben Coden, signing off.